identifies the purpose of their visit.
Right.
Whether it is an arrest or whether it is
search warrant.
A search warrant, or whether they want to inquire something from you.
Right.
Another aspect of this would be to ask why they are there in the first place. And so the question that we ought to pose is to differentiate the mechanisms of what is happening. What is happening typically in the most of these cases is not legal in the first place, because if you stop it, they will not take you to a police station and say that you are obstructing justice. You are obstructing an injustice. That is not what the law prescribes. The law prescribes obstructing justice. And arrest, lawful detention, lawful incarceration, including lawful seizure, is what the law prescribes. Anything outside that, as a lawful citizen, you must say no. You must say no.
Yes, and that's where we're getting to. You're just praising that City Hopper driver.
Absolutely.
And I hope he's not in danger for what he did. But it needs to be put out there then that you are within your right to do that.
Yes.
Because pingu, the cuffs, or a gun, brandishing a gun, isn't necessarily a sign of this is an arrest. Because that's what they would try to do.
Everyone has these devices, including criminals.
Yes.
And more so, it is only criminals who would want to use these devices to scare away lawful members of the public.
Right.
Because the police are, in fact, by law, mandated not even to arrest you by putting handcuffs on you. There are some offenses that don't require putting handcuffs on you.
Yes.
The handcuffs are only for purposes of when the police reasonably believes that you'll escape.
Yes.
You get the point?
Right.
And so even in an arrest, a police officer does not require to have a firearm. Because if I don't have a firearm, then why does the police officer require a firearm? There are some arrests, in fact, which are so peaceful as the police officer should order you to walk with him or her to the nearest police station, because we are civilized.
Right.
We are civilized citizens, and we are living in such progressive times that we don't need coercive force to apply the administration of justice.
Exactly.
And this brings us even to the question on when police use excessive force or use directives which are outside their mandate.
Right.
And the question as to accountability of unlawful orders issued by those in superior command within the National Police Service. And we've seen the case that was filed by Kenya Commission on Human Rights, as well as the Law Society of Kenya, that held the second former outgoing Inspector General of Police, Koome, personally liable for acts of his juniors in the chain of command.
Right.
And it says that for their actions or inactions, he will bear the responsibility personally, not as an office, because some of these acts are not to the office, they are to the holder.
Okay.
Because then it separates the office which is deemed to be a sanctified office as to the person performing these illegal acts. And this case was determined pursuant to the directions that were issued by Koome against the KMPDU strike that was earlier on in the month of February or March. I cannot remember, where the chairperson of KMPDU, Dr. Tia, was injured severely and had to go to hospital.
Yes.
So all this culminated, and I believe that the jurisprudence and the policy framework that will come out of these decisions that we are getting out of court will then guide a Kenya that is ruled by law and not by fiat.
What would that mean then, if indeed it takes effect, those orders against Koome, to the current hold of office and moving forward? What does this mean? That it holds you or holds the IG of police personally responsible for the actions of his juniors. What is that meant to translate to practically?
After we were done with the ICC circus, where it was now imperative that we separate the office of the Inspector General, and under Article 240 to 245, where you have the national security organs, you have the spectacular division of independence that the office of the Inspector General operates on an independent manner. That means that his command is independent, or her command is independent. It brings us post General Ali dispensation, where his defense would have been, I was given instructions by the presidency. So it says that even the Inspector General cannot use the defense that he was instructed by anyone above him. And it separates the issues even with the prosecutorial bodies, that it says any instruction given must be in writing.
Right.
Any instruction given to the Inspector General must be in writing, meaning that it only goes to show it is for purposes of proof, to prove that this decision was made not by my office independently, but I was being directed by other security organs or other heads of security organs in a multi-sectoral or multi-force disciplinary project.
Yes.
But in the going forward, we will have a Kenya where the national, they are not called forces, they are called services.
Yes.
The national security services will be operating within the law and in respect of the law.
Okay.
So that the law is curated to act for the people of Kenya.
Okay.
So if they will be acting for the law, then it means they will be acting for the people of Kenya.
All right.
Yes.
Let me draw back to the case concerning Maria
Yes.
of Tanzania, who's now free, thankfully, after that ordeal, having been abducted by 4 masked men, she describes them. And she has said, in her interpretation of the events, and based on, of course, her work as a human rights advocate and her critical stance against the Tanzanian government, that there had to be some collaboration with the authorities in Tanzania for what happened to have taken place. And as LSK, it is, of course, in your purview to see what's playing out in terms of transnational operations of this nature, illegal transnational operations, and what steps do you possibly take next to engage your counterparts in Tanzania. So in your view as LSK, this is not a personal opinion, but in your view as LSK, do you see that being as has been described by Amnesty International, that transnational, illegal transnational cases increasing with what we've just witnessed in Maria's case?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not an isolated case, and we are happy that this case has highlighted
yes.
a trend. And the beauty about it is Maria is such a notorious political figure in Tanzania that some UN bodies had to speak about it yesterday and today.
Yes.
They put their weight into it. I say this because they had been silent before Maria's case. And you see, with Maria's case, it just goes to prove that, in fact, there is a cabal within the East African region that has now risen, whether you call it the axis of evil,
yes.
that their partnership is hell-bent on flaunting not only their domestic laws, but also regional.
Right.
Regional, at a regional level where we call it the East African, as well as the sub-regional, which goes on to other bodies, in the West,
right.
Up in the North, and also in the South, COMESA. What we are saying is that they particularly had the ability to identify her, they had the ability to track her, they had the ability to abduct her, and they had the ability to stay with her for over 5 hours. Goes on to say that they had a car which was registered in Kenyan, plates.
Yeah.
They were speaking to persons both in Kenya and outside Kenya. So it means the arrangement was being done in Kenya as well as persons outside Kenya.
Yes.
And when I say persons outside Kenya, Mark, I want you to understand that it is Tanzania.
Right.
And that the direction that they were heading for was Tanzania.
Right.
Had they not found the baggage and the burden of, the various roadblocks that were now being erected, the conundrum of getting to the border, not being able to pass,
right.
and also the spirit, the fighting spirit that Maria has. Maria did not give up.
Right.
And even as she was getting tired and tired, she did not give up.
Right.
And this is the spirit that we witnessed even yesterday, that even other Kenyans had attempted to, stop these ongoings, and there was a lot of furor on the online platforms. It was not business as usual, let's just say that.
Yeah.
And so even as they were, hell-bent or determined on accomplishing their ill-mannered project, they found a resistance both in terms of communication, logistics, and even the spirit. And so they had to let her go.
And it would have been a diplomatic nightmare based on the attention that it has drawn. So what, in your view, really was the biggest hurdle for them? And this is, look at it as treating it as a case for the future, so that we can know what to go for to protect anyone who would come in under these circumstances. Was it the noise that was being made collectively online, which gets attention? Was it the involvement of international voices and alliances? Was it your collaboration with Amnesty International and the others in getting a collective voice to really push for her release? What do you think really worked in this case?
Everything culminated in a very well circled spiritual a fulfillment. Both the effort that was put on social media, the effort that was put on our stakeholders, because there are some stakeholders that we deal with, and there was a persistent commitment which we feel that they saw the logic. Also our partners at the border, across the border, the Tanganyika Law Society, various UN bodies, both in Kenya and outside Kenya. Curiously, Kenya is turning out to have the biggest hub of UN-affiliated bodies amidst the violations of human rights that are continually being perpetuated by the state of Kenya. And it only goes to speak that this was a particular unique case, because if you remember what happened to Kizza Besigye, who was abducted in the same fashion along the very road where we are recording, the border in which he was crossed at Busia is further than any Tanzanian border in Nairobi. And so the shortest time possible, they were unable to get out, possibly even of Nairobi County, and were just loitering with our sister Maria in Nairobi, just looking for a way in which they could be able to get her out. But it was impossible for them to get out. And by grace and by spirit of belief, they somehow just got tired and had to let her go. Probably they detained most of our communication devices